What if I told you that what you have been waiting for, the financial breakthrough, the provision, the open door that changes everything, has already been released from heaven and is already in motion toward you right now, not coming someday, not maybe if everything lines up, already sent, already in transit, already carrying your name. The only question left is whether you are going to be in the right position to receive it when it arrives. Stay right here because the next few minutes may be the most important thing you hear today. I am speaking directly to you right now. The chosen one who has been in a season of financial pressure that has tested you in ways that go far deeper than money. Because financial pressure is never just about money. It is about the weight of wondering if things will ever change. It is about the quiet fear that visits you in the middle of the night when the numbers do not add up and the needs are still there, and the breakthrough you have been believing for feels like it keeps getting pushed just slightly out of reach. It is about the prayers you have prayed over and over, the same prayers with the same faith and the same desperation underneath the faith, asking God to move, asking Him to open a door, asking Him why it is taking so long when you have been faithful and you have believed and you have done everything you know to do. I hear you. More importantly, God hears you. And what He wants you to understand in this moment, in this specific moment where you are watching this message, is that the answer to what you have been asking has already been prepared. It was prepared before you finished praying the first time you prayed it. The provision that you need did not have to be created in response to your request. It was already assembled. It was already designated. It already has your name and your address and your specific situation written on it. The delay you have experienced was never a delay in God's willingness. It was always a preparation in your readiness, and the preparation is complete. Type Amen if you have been waiting for a financial breakthrough and you are still believing. Let me tell you what God wants you to understand about money and provision and the way He moves in the financial dimension of a chosen one's life. Because there is a way that the world thinks about wealth and a way that God thinks about it, and they are fundamentally different. The world says that money follows effort, that provision follows strategy, that financial breakthrough comes to the person who works the hardest, or thinks the smartest, or knows the right people. And while effort and wisdom and connection are not without their place, they are not the foundation of how God moves for His chosen ones. The foundation is always covenant. The foundation is always the relationship between a faithful God and a trusting child. And in that covenant, the provision was never dependent on your ability to manufacture it. It was always dependent on His ability to release it. And He is releasing it now. The money has been sent. I want you to sit with those words for a moment because they are not metaphor. They are not a poetic way of saying that someday things might get better. They are a declaration of something that has already occurred in the Spirit and is now working its way into the natural. When God sends something, it does not travel slowly. It does not get lost in transit. It does not arrive at the wrong address. When He releases provision into the life of a chosen one who has been faithful in the season of lack, that provision moves with the precision and the authority of the one who released it, and nothing in the natural world has the power to intercept it. Type 111 if you receive the truth that your provision has already been released. Now, I want to talk to you about what has been happening in the Spirit during the season of financial pressure you have been walking through. Because nothing God allows in the life of a chosen one is without purpose. Not even the hard seasons, not even the seasons that felt like lack and limitation and the near constant anxiety of not having enough. Those seasons were not punishment. They were not evidence of God's displeasure. They were not the result of insufficient faith on your part. They were a crucible, a specific kind of testing ground that produces something in a person that prosperity alone could never build. What was being built in you during the lack was a dependency on God that goes to a depth that comfort never reaches. When you have everything you need, it is easy to thank God and mean it, but still operate primarily from your own resources. When you have nothing, when the cupboard is genuinely empty and the account is genuinely low and the need is genuinely pressing, and you choose in that moment to trust God rather than panic, to praise rather than despair, to keep your eyes on what He promised rather than what the natural circumstances are showing you, something gets built inside you that is permanent. A faith that has been tested at that level does not go back to being untested faith. It carries the memory of the fire. It carries the knowledge that God was faithful in the worst moment, and that knowledge becomes an unshakable foundation for every season that follows. You built that foundation during your season of lack, and now that foundation is ready to hold what God is about to place on it. Type foundation if you know that God was building something in you through the hard financial season. I want to address something that some of you are carrying right now that is actually creating a resistance to receiving what God has sent. And it is this: somewhere along the way, in the middle of the financial pressure, you began to make an agreement with lack. Not consciously, not with any intention of settling for less than God's best, but the length of the season and the weight of the waiting created a gradual adjustment of your expectations. You stopped fully believing that significant provision was actually coming because hoping for it and then not seeing it had become more painful than simply accepting a lower ceiling. You began to define your prayers around survival rather than abundance. You began to think of provision as getting enough rather than receiving the overflow that God actually prepared for you. I'm not saying this to condemn that adjustment because it was a completely understandable human response to a difficult and prolonged season. But I am saying it because that agreement with lack is the one thing that can create a delay between the moment God sends something and the moment you are actually able to receive it. You cannot receive with closed hands. And hands that have made peace with not receiving eventually stop being positioned to receive. So part of what is happening in this moment, part of why this message found you today, is that God is opening your hands again. He is expanding your expectation back to the level of what He actually prepared. He is reminding you that the provision He sent is not a small provision designed to barely meet your need. It is an overflow provision. It is a more than enough provision. It is a provision that is going to answer not just the most pressing need, but the accumulated needs of the entire season of lack, and then go beyond that into territory you did not even have the faith to ask for. Type open hands. If you are releasing the agreement with lack and reopening your expectations right now, let me tell you what the money being sent actually looks like in the practical experience of your life. Because some of you are expecting it to arrive in one specific way and you may miss it if it comes through a different channel. God is creative in His methods of provision. He is not limited to the pathways that make the most logical sense from where you are standing. The provision can come through an unexpected phone call, through a door that opens in a field you were not even focused on, through a person who comes into your life with an opportunity that feels like it came from nowhere, through an idea that arrives with such clarity and such force that you know it did not originate in your own mind, through a legal settlement, a debt forgiven, an inheritance, a promotion, a contract, a client, a connection, a conversation that turns into something you could not have planned. What all of these pathways have in common is that they arrive with the signature of God on them. There is a quality to provision that comes from heaven that is distinct from the provision that you manufacture on your own. It comes with peace. It comes without the grinding anxiety that usually accompanies financial movement in your life. It comes with a rightness to it, a sense that this is exactly what was supposed to happen, that leaves no room for doubt about the source. When it arrives, you will know. Your spirit will recognize it. And your assignment in that moment is not to question it, not to shrink back from it, not to decide that it is too good to be true. Your assignment is to receive it with the gratitude and the stewardship that honors the God who sent it. Take a moment and like this video because your support helps this message reach someone who is on the verge of giving up on their breakthrough. Type receive if you are positioning yourself right now to receive what God has sent. Now I need to talk to you about stewardship, because God does not release overflow into the life of someone who is not ready to carry it with wisdom. And part of the preparation that has been happening in your season of lack is the development of a relationship with provision that is fundamentally different from what you had before the hard season. In the hard season, you learned the value of what you did not have. You learned the weight of every dollar, the significance of every resource, the cost of every decision. You learned not to take for granted what once felt automatic. And that learning, that recalibration of your relationship with the resource, is exactly the preparation that qualifies you to carry the overflow without being destroyed by it. Because overflow without wisdom is not a blessing. It is a burden. It is a test that many people fail because the sudden expansion of resource reveals what was never addressed in the season of lack. It reveals character issues, priority issues, relationship issues that the pressure of scarcity was keeping contained. But the chosen one who goes through the fire of financial pressure and comes out on the other side with a refined and settled relationship with resource, that person is ready for overflow. That person can be trusted with abundance because they know what it costs, they know what it means, they know who sent it and why, and they will steward it in a way that honors the source and multiplies the impact. You are that person. The season you have been through has made you that person. And God is about to trust you with what you are now ready to carry. Type steward if you are committed to honoring God with what He is releasing into your life. Let me speak to the urgency in the title of this message. 99 seconds. The countdown that feels impossible. The sense that time is running out. The anxiety of a deadline that you are not sure you are going to meet. Some of you are living in that feeling right now in a very literal way. There is a bill that is due. There is a deadline that is approaching. There is a need that cannot wait much longer. And the gap between where you are and where you need to be feels like more than the time remaining can bridge. I want to speak to that urgency directly, and then I want to release something over it. The urgency you feel is real. The need is real. The deadline is real. But the God you serve is not constrained by time in the way you are. He is not scrambling to find a solution before the clock runs out. He is not watching your deadline with the same anxiety you are watching it with. He has already seen the moment when the provision arrives, and He has already determined that it arrives before the deadline passes. What looks like a countdown to disaster from your vantage point looks like a precise and perfectly timed delivery from His. And His perspective is the one that is accurate. Type on time. If you believe God's provision arrives exactly when it is needed, not a moment too late. There is something that happens in the spirit in the final moments before a breakthrough. The pressure intensifies. The circumstances seem to get worse rather than better. The gap between the need and the provision appears to widen rather than close. This is not evidence that the breakthrough is not coming. It is evidence that it is very close, because the enemy understands that the breakthrough is coming too, and his last effort is always to make the waiting so unbearable that you abandon your position of faith at the exact moment when holding it would have released everything. He wants you to give up at the 98th second. He wants you to stop believing at the moment when another 10 seconds of faith would have opened everything. Do not give up at the 98th second. Hold your position. Hold your faith. Hold the knowledge that the money has been sent, that the provision is in transit, that what God prepared has your name on it, and it is closer than the pressure of the moment is making it feel. In part 2, I am going to tell you exactly how to position yourself in these final moments before the breakthrough, what to do with the waiting, how to recognize the provision when it arrives in whatever form God chooses to send it, and what comes after the first wave of financial breakthrough that is going to reshape your understanding of what God actually has planned for your financial life in this new season. Welcome back, Chosen One. If you made it to part 2, it is because something in part 1 hit a place in you that needed to be hit. In part 1, God spoke about the provision that has already been released, about the season of lack and what it was building in you, about the agreement with scarcity that needs to be broken, and about the urgency of the final moments before breakthrough. In part 2, I want to get practical. I want to tell you how to position yourself correctly in these final moments, what the breakthrough looks like when it arrives, and what God is actually planning for your financial life that goes far beyond the immediate need you are focused on right now. Type ready if you are prepared to receive everything God has in this part. The first thing I want to tell you about positioning yourself for the breakthrough is this. Gratitude is not just an emotional response to provision. It is a spiritual posture that creates the conditions for provision to flow. And I want to be very specific about this because it is counterintuitive. It is easy to be grateful after the breakthrough arrives. It is natural to thank God when the need has been met and the pressure has lifted and the abundance is visible. But the gratitude that has the greatest power to accelerate the release of what God has already sent is the gratitude that is offered before you can see it. The praise that costs you something because it is offered in the middle of the lack rather than in the relief of the abundance. When you wake up tomorrow and the need is still there and the provision has not yet visibly arrived, do not wait until it comes to thank God. Thank Him now. Thank Him for what He has already sent, even though your eyes have not yet confirmed the arrival. Thank Him for the faithfulness He has demonstrated in every previous season, even when this season still feels uncertain. Thank Him for the fact that the money has been sent, declared over your life in this moment, received by your faith right now, even before your bank account reflects it. That gratitude offered in advance is an act of faith that moves in the Spirit with extraordinary power. It signals to heaven that you believe what you cannot yet see, and faith that believes before seeing is the faith that releases the supernatural. Type grateful. Now, if you are thanking God right now before the visible breakthrough arrives. The second thing about positioning is this: speak what you believe, not what you see. There is a creative power in the words of a chosen one that most people severely underestimate. The words you speak about your financial situation are not just descriptions of reality. They are participating in the construction of reality. When you say, "I am always broke," you are not simply describing a condition, you are reinforcing a structure. When you say, "I can never get ahead," you are not just expressing frustration, you are building walls around your own potential movement. And when you say, "In faith, the provision is coming, God is moving on my behalf, the money has been sent and I am ready to receive it," you are doing something that has real power in the Spirit. I am not talking about the kind of empty positive thinking that pretends problems do not exist. I am talking about the intentional alignment of your words with what God has spoken over your life. He has spoken provision. He has spoken abundance. He has spoken more than enough. And your job is to bring your language into agreement with His declaration rather than into agreement with your current circumstances. This alignment of your speech with God's Word is not a formula or a technique. It is an act of trust. It is saying, "I believe what you said more than I believe what I see." And that trust, expressed through your words, is one of the most powerful things you can do in the waiting season. Type "I declare it" if you are choosing to speak what God says about your provision rather than what your circumstances show. Now let me talk about what the arrival of the financial breakthrough is going to feel like, because some of you have been waiting so long that you have a complicated relationship with hope. You want to believe, and part of you does believe, but there is another part of you that has been disappointed enough times that it reflexively puts a guard up around expectation. It wants to protect you from the pain of hoping again and being let down again. And that protective mechanism, while understandable, is actually working against you in this final stretch. So let me tell you what the arrival feels like, so that when it begins to happen, you can recognize it and open to it rather than guard against it. It starts with a shift in the atmosphere before anything visible changes. There is a lifting of something heavy, a quality of peace that enters the situation that was not there before, a sense that something has moved even though you cannot yet point to what moved. Pay attention to that shift. That is the spirit world catching up to what heaven already released. That shift is the signal that what was sent is about to become visible. Then comes the first evidence. And I want to prepare you for the fact that the first evidence may not look like the full provision immediately. It may look like one piece of the answer, one door that opens, one conversation that turns in an unexpected direction, one number that changes, one resource that arrives from a source you were not expecting. Do not dismiss this first evidence because it does not look like the full breakthrough yet. Receive it as confirmation. Celebrate it as the first installment of what God has released, because that first piece is not all that is coming. It is the signal that the channel is open, and what follows is going to increase. Type "first evidence" if you are watching for the first sign that God's provision is arriving. I want to speak now about something that is going to happen after the initial breakthrough that most people are not prepared for. When the first wave of financial relief arrives, when the immediate pressure lifts and the most urgent need is met, there is a temptation to settle there, to exhale, to say, "Okay, that is done, I can relax now." And while rest and gratitude in that moment are completely appropriate, settling there would be a mistake. Because what God has sent is not just enough to cover the immediate need. What God has sent is the beginning of a financial repositioning that is going to change your relationship with money and resource permanently. After the first wave comes the second. After the immediate need is met, comes the provision for the next level. After the crisis is resolved, comes the abundance. And after the abundance comes the overflow that becomes the tool of your purpose. Because financial breakthrough in the life of a chosen one is never just personal. It is always missional. It always arrives with an assignment attached to it. God does not pour overflow into a vessel without a plan for what that overflow is going to do in the world. The provision that is coming to you is not just going to change your life. It is going to pass through your hands and change the lives of people you are connected to, people God is going to connect you to, people who need what your abundance is going to make possible. This is the full picture of what has been sent. Not just a rescue from the season of lack, but a repositioning as someone through whom God moves significant resources for significant purposes. That is who you are becoming. That is the level of financial stewardship that the preparation of your hard season was building you toward, and it is all already in motion. Type purpose if you receive the truth that your financial breakthrough is connected to something greater than your personal need. Let me talk about the people around you during this season of breakthrough, because some of the people who watched you struggle are going to have a complicated reaction to your change of season. Some will celebrate with you genuinely, and those people are the ones to keep close. But others, people who got comfortable with a version of you that was financially limited, people whose own sense of security was quietly built on the comparison between your situation and theirs, those people are going to feel something shift when your breakthrough arrives. Some of them will say things that try to minimize what God has done. Some of them will offer unsolicited opinions about what you should do with what you have received. Some of them will suddenly need things from you in ways that feel less like genuine relationship and more like access to your new resource. You do not need to manage these reactions. You do not need to make everyone comfortable with your elevation. Your job is simply to stay connected to the God who sent the provision and to steward it according to his direction rather than the expectations of the people around you. He will show you who to bless and how and when. He will show you the boundaries that protect both your provision and your peace. Trust his direction over the voices of everyone around you who have their own ideas about what your breakthrough means for them. Type boundaries if you are committed to stewarding your breakthrough according to God's direction rather than other people's expectations. I want to speak specifically now to those of you for whom the financial need is truly urgent, for whom 99 seconds is not a metaphor, but a very real description of the time you feel you have left before something serious happens. A foreclosure, an eviction, a disconnection, a debt that is about to come due in a way that has real and significant consequences. I'm not going to minimize the reality of that pressure with spiritual language that floats above the weight of what you are actually facing. What I am going to say is this: the God you serve has moved in more impossible situations than yours. He has provided in more desperate moments than this one. He has opened doors that were not just closed, but locked and bolted and guarded. And he has never once been too late. Never. Not for any chosen one who held their faith in the final seconds. Not for any person who refused to let go of his hand in the moment when letting go would have been the most understandable thing in the world. Hold on. In these final seconds before the visible breakthrough, hold on. Not because holding on is easy. Not because the circumstances deserve your faith. But because the God who sent the provision is faithful regardless of what the circumstances look like. He was faithful before this season. He was faithful through this season. And he is faithful now in the moment when faithful is the hardest thing to be. Type hold on if you are choosing to hold your faith in this final stretch before the breakthrough arrives. Let me close with this. The money has been sent. I want you to receive that not as a hopeful statement, but as a declaration of what has already occurred in the Spirit. The provision that covers your need, that addresses the urgency, that begins the repositioning of your financial life, that opens the channel for the overflow that is connected to your purpose, that provision is already in motion. It left heaven with your name on it. It is traveling with the precision of a God who has never been late. And it is arriving in your life in the form and through the channel that God determined before you even knew you needed it. Your job in this moment is not to figure out how. Your job is not to manufacture a pathway or engineer a solution. Your job is to receive what has been sent with the faith and the gratitude and the open hands of a chosen one who knows that their Father is not a God who promises and does not deliver. He delivers, always, on time, every time. For every chosen one who refuses to close their hands before the provision arrives. The pressure of the season is ending. The restriction is lifting. The channel is open. And what comes through it is going to be so much more than you have been able to believe for. In the weight of the waiting that you are going to need a new framework for what abundance actually looks like in your life. Type, it is done. If you receive by faith right now that the money has been sent and you are ready to receive everything God has prepared for you in this new season, God sees your need. He has always seen it. He saw it before you felt it. He prepared the answer before you prayed the prayer. And the answer is already on its way. Step into the receiving. Open your hands. Lift your eyes from the lack and fix them on the God who owns everything and has chosen you as the one through whom He is about to demonstrate exactly what that ownership means in a life that is fully surrendered to His purpose. The money has been sent. Receive it. It is yours.